Hi everyone, welcome back to Real Talk, our campus weekly video series where we discuss relationships, empathy, advocacy, and life. All of these episodes are pre-recorded and released every Tuesday at 5 p.m. on our IGTV and on our Facebook page through a YouTube link. And today's episode, if you've noticed, we have some guest speakers and we're really excited to bring them in. And I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute, but our topic today, and you'll learn to our audience why we have these particular guest speakers, is about kind of how sexual harassment exists in the entertainment industry and particularly in theater, and what that kind of culture looks like. And so with us today are two Women's Center staff members. So we have Matt Austin, who is our Director of Education, Training, and Outreach, and then one of our amazing prevention educators, Courtney Lauria.
Whoa, I didn't get an amazing. Okay.
Amazing Director of Education, Training.
All right, we're kicking it off real well.
Great start.
Great start.
Our whole department is amazing.
Okay.
So, in addition to the fact that they are a part of our amazing department of education, we wanted Matt and Courtney on this episode because they also have a background in theater and working in kind of this entertainment industry and workplace kind of environment. So that's in addition to their experience with interpersonal violence, being employees at the Women's Center, we wanted to get their perspective in, about theater and all that. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves first and then we can dive into like our discussion?
Sure. Alphabetically. So I'm Matt. I am the amazing director of Education, Outreach, and Training here at the Women's Center. That's what I do for money. So let me tell you my background in the stuff I don't do for money. Entertainment. So for a very long time, I've been involved in the local theater scene, community theater, some regional theater. I've been doing that for, I was on another panel show, not to brag,
popular.
Recently, and I realized that this year is my 20th year doing theater, and my, as an actor, 15th year being a director. So I've done theater around here. And I worked at Broadway.com. So with Courtney, that's where we met. So I was sort of we were Broadway adjacent and off Broadway adjacent. She was on off Broadway, but I'll let her get there. Other than that, I've done a couple of independent movies. I hosted a TV show for 5 years, all about theater, just a local thing. So I have a large background. That's not the right phrase. Extensive background in theater. I graduated from WestCon. This is going out to all sort of college students, but WestCon specific, I graduated from WestCon and was highly involved in their theater department there. So that's my background. Here I am. Thanks.
The amazing theater background you have. Thank you.
Did I miss anything? Oh, so something I want to hit on later, but I also want to mention it in my bio is I'm also very involved in the improv community. I was involved down in New York City with the Upright Citizens Brigade, and currently I work with the CT Comedy Theater in Hartford. The reason I mention that is we'll talk about consent in a little bit, and but I wanted to bring that in. Go ahead.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Courtney.
You're the only other guest. Who else has to introduce themselves?
I know, we should have made
Cara. I don't know if they're sponsored and have a commercial break. I don't know.
Heard from our sponsor.
Famous yet.
I work at the Women's Center as an amazing prevention educator. I worked at Broadway.com. I was a coordinator of Broadway Classroom. I set up workshops for kids to meet Broadway actors and take classes with them. I was also in the off-Broadway production of Tony and Tina's Wedding, and I am a playwright associated with Youngblood Ensemble Studio Theater. So I went to Central Connecticut State University and got a theater background, and I'm excited to have this conversation. I think that Matt and I have unique backgrounds in theater, and now working for the Women's Center doing prevention education. It really is something that is a topic that is needed to be discussed within the entertainment industry, as we've seen unfold in the Me Too movement and everything we're going to talk about today. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so
Can
excited.
Can I throw one more thing in?
No.
You can edit this out. You can edit it all out. No, but theater and entertainment side of things is what brought me to the Women's Center. Is that I was a volunteer with the Act Out program, our educational theater program, for a long time before I actually became an employee, and then I became an educator, and then kind of took over that Act Out stuff. And yeah, so that led me here. So all roads lead to this.
I know, it's so cool. And that's why, I mean, obviously I know you both as friends outside of work as well too, but it is so impressive to hear your kind of resume like in this format too.
Blown away. I didn't know all of this about.
Courtney's being very modest.
She is.
She's got a resume that's pretty awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're very sweet.
So cool. We were preparing for this episode like last week, and Cara told me that you were a playwright, and I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "That's like the coolest thing ever." This is.
Aw.
I've worked with you all for what, like 3 years now, and I've learned so much in the first 5 minutes of this conversation.
Aw.
Well, thank
Sweet.
you. Is it Sarah? Is it Sarah?
Stop it.
Yes, that's it. It's okay.
So I think actually, Matt, since you brought up consent, maybe that's where we can start. I mean, or we maybe it makes sense to start with kind of the culture and then go into kind of specifics
whatever
on
you-
consent. Because I think the reason like we wanted to do this episode too is to obviously, like Courtney, you were talking about with the Me Too movement and things that have been brought to light. I think part of that is because there is a whole awesome culture within theater of like how close people get when they're working on a production together, and boundaries kind of shift and change, which I think is part of the consent thing you were talking about. But can you, I don't know, both of you talk a little bit about what that culture feels like and looks like?
I mean, I think to start, when you're in college situation or even a professional situation, when you get the call sheet or you see the list of who you're going to be working with, the immediate feeling is, I got it, I'm psyched. The next feeling is, this is going to be my family. And you're very right when you say like the community of theater it's very appealing, especially to somebody that might not have an interest in sports or looking for their people and your creatives and you're not quite sure where to start. And so I'm sure Matt can attest to that feeling of like, I got the part I wanted, now I have this family. And you immediately jump into rehearsal situations and there's never a discussion about like comfortability, sensitivity, boundaries. It's not, at least when I was an active theater member of the community, like that didn't happen. And I think that times have changed drastically. And I do think that there's more of an opportunity for the director of a show or a stage manager to put together a let's break the ice and also let's talk about respecting people's boundaries. And that's just like not discussed. And I do think that a lot of that has changed in the last couple of months to years. And I'm excited for that change when I do go back into the theater.
Yeah, that's interesting that isn't something I would think as someone who I was only part of theater for like an 8th grade production of Aladdin. But I would think that would be an automatic thing.
So can I jump in? It isn't. But what I think happens, and I've felt this, I don't know if Courtney has ever felt this, but I think it is something that has always been assumed that you're taken care of. Assumed that the actor is, if you've got a scene or something to do, that you're talking it out with your partner. I think it's always sort of just been assumed, or that if you're uncomfortable, we can talk about this too. If you're uncomfortable with something, that it's going to be assumed that you're going to say something. And get into that's a whole other discussion, but I think there never is that conversation. In theater there hasn't been that conversation. It's so funny because I just did I don't do film things a lot because it's tedious to me. Good for people who like it. But a couple weeks ago or a month ago I did a thing for Norwalk Historical Society, and it was there. I had like a person that was like working with my makeup, and I had some prosthetics and stuff, and he was having this conversation is it okay if I had some other prosthetics in my arm, is it okay if I do this, she was literally asking that, is it okay, and it was just, it was great, A, but B, it was just something I had never seen, and it was weird. I mean, it was great, but it was weird because I was like, oh,
Wow.
yeah, thank you for asking, because this is not a thing that I get asked.
Wow.
It's interesting because even in your role, you know, at the Women's Center, you were also shocked by that like culture of asking for consent or whatever, because it was so new in that in that space. And it just shows that like it really is noticed when people do ask or when they do take the time to like set boundaries. And you were saying before about how it's assumed that you will have that conversation on your own or with your, you know, scene partner or whatever it might be. And I can imagine that maybe in a professional setting that might be more likely to happen, maybe. But for college students learning in the theater program, that's going to be hard to navigate.
Well, but that's, sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
Well, just very quickly, that's that thing we talk about, the normalization, is if that, for me, the not having a conversation was what I learned.
Right.
And this was what was like, okay, this is, you just figure it out. And I got to tell you, I've been in those shows and things that there have been those situations, never had those conversations, never. Until very recently, there was one show I was working on, but those conversations just weren't had. Even me bringing it up. Sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just going to piggyback off Sydney saying like that must be hard to navigate. You don't even know you're the navigator. You don't even know that you have the ability to say what bothers you, because there's a part of you that's like, I got this role. Do you know how many people want this role? Like, also, I've worked so hard for this. Like, I'm not going to jeopardize anything. I'm not going to rustle feathers. I'm not going to piss anyone off. I just want to do my job, and I want people to adore me while I'm doing it. And I don't want to be the one to cause problems.
Yeah.
And that's,
I jump off of that. I think, not to exclude you from this part, Matt, because there might be another perspective here, but as a female perspective, is that something, Courtney, that you think, or Matt, if you come back, the like female perspective of it, is there a pressure to not complain or to not like bring up issues or concerns as a woman because of like external kind of gender expectations and things?
Oh,
of,
it might
that
be.
woman. Yeah.
Absolutely. In my experience, I would say absolutely. I would say that there's so many women vying for the same part, or there's so many females that were in the theater, especially at college, and then you're in this competitive state. And you want it, and you don't want to be labeled as anybody that's difficult to work with. Right. Even if you were just even if I was just establishing, like, this makes me uncomfortable, I know that I would fear being labeled, and then would that jeopardize parts in the future? Wow. Also, in smaller roles, there was a one-act play festival we did in college, and it was a play called Density Crisis by Christopher Durang, and it's a mom and daughter, and then a couple of guys, and it's a very intimate setting. And right away, we jumped in, and there was a part where one of the males was supposed to gently push me. And we had not talked about what that interaction was going to look like. We were just like, let's just start the scene and see where it goes.
Ooh, I'm nervous.
And the other actor just took me and threw me. And I remember falling and being like, this is crazy. Like, what is happening? And it was, Courtney, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, and it was like, all right, let's get up and let's try it again. Just, don't push her that hard. And it wasn't a discussion of, all right, let's talk about comfortability. Let's talk about where you can put your hands. Is this okay? Is that okay? Where I do think theater departments now, or at least I hope they do, take more of that stage combat aspect, and that talking about what is sexual harassment, what can you touch, like what can't you touch, like what's comfortable. Like, I hope that there is more of that happening. Sorry, I'm getting a million emails.
We're getting the same emails.
I need to know. Of course, there you go.
So that's helpful to hear. I mean, that's awful, but helpful to hear that perspective.
Yeah, I do think that that people now that are in school are much more aware. They're self-aware, and they're also aware of what they can ask for. And I do think that the way that people talk about physicality, interaction, boundaries. I think that COVID has changed how people talk about boundaries, and it's way more accepted now to say like, oh, I'm not a hugger, or I don't want you, like, let's meet outside, like whatever it may be. I'm trailing, but yeah.
I think it comes back to touch on kind of the core issue that we're dancing around a little bit, but it all comes back to what we talk about with power and control and the hierarchy of, and I unfortunately think this hasn't gone away, especially in college theater departments, of the like, if I don't play along, I'm not getting a part. If
or also the grade, if we're talking about students too.
Yes, or if I grade, or, and not just someone in a situation, but we were talking before we got on here, Sydney had mentioned bystanders, of seeing something happening and that person saying, well, I'm not going to report that because then I'm not going to get cast by this director ever again, or so I don't want to get involved, when it's so important for those bystanders to get involved. But the power and control thing is awful. And I don't know about, I can't speak for Courtney, but I know even myself, I've been a victim of that, for standing up or saying something, possibly even in college. But like not being directed. But I always, when I go in, because I talk to the WestCon Theater, Anthony DePoto's classes, and I talk about the importance of saying something, even outside of a college situation, any entertainment thing that you are doing, saying something, helping that person, speaking up is so much more important than you're gonna get another role somewhere. You're gonna do another play. You're gonna do a thing like that. So don't fear that. My ring light is slowly coming into the but
it's like, yes, you're saying everything right.
I always say, you know what, if you don't feel okay, you don't have to work with that person again. There are so many, make your own opportunities. There's so many other opportunities. Get with your friends, make art, like art. That was a big thing, especially in college, where I was like, oh man, I'm not gonna get cast by this person, and they always do the main stage shows or whatever it was. And I'm like, so I guess I'm never gonna do a New York show. I'm never gonna go, when WestCon went to New York and brought a show to New York, I'm not ever going to get cast in a New York show now.
Which is crazy, because you're there to learn and you're at a college taking classes. And yes, you should be cast in the roles if the theater department is putting on a show, because you're a theater major and this is what the goal is. And why not nurture that while you're here? Because when we're out of here, that's when it gets harder. And so if we set the ground rules of like respect for your fellow artists, creative space where you feel comfortable. Yes, a lot of theater is huggy, kissy, and intimacy, but that needs to be worked up to, and it shouldn't be automatically expected. And I think that that's a big part of the entertainment industry, and where people feel uncomfortable and feel like lines are being crossed, is because directors need to set boundaries, theater professors, head of departments need to set a tone for what it's expected in the classroom or on the stage in the black box when you're working. It really comes from high up, and if all of those people get on board, it should create such a comfortable environment for a student that is there learning.
And that's why I'm so excited we're having this conversation, because obviously at schools, in the communities, whatever it might be, there are these structures of people in places that can create these spaces. And I know that the people we've worked with are trying really hard to do that kind of a thing. And I hope that this conversation generates further conversation of students or of people in the community, and like we can then take steps further to like help establish that, because we all talk about this stuff every day. We talk about it all day long. This is what we do. And, you know, we started Real Talk because we realized we were talking about this in our like personal time too, because it is so important. And I think like we want to help people have these conversations and figure out how to establish that setting to like create those boundaries, or just a comfortable space where like it could be accepted if somebody has different boundaries on another person, instead of like ostracizing someone for it.
Yeah.
And also sorry.
No, go ahead.
Also feeling, the other thing is always going back to that power and control, and feeling that you can speak up. Right. Knowing that it is okay to say something, because I think there is that culture of, well, it's not okay It's not okay if you say something. I know, so, I'm bringing it back to the improv.
Yeah.
So, and consent. In the improv community, and I think it's to some extent too in theater community, it's this idea of yes and, meaning you do what you agree and do whatever your partner is saying. That's how scenes happen, is you just go along with whatever happens, whatever your scene partner does, you just go. But it's important to know with the yes and mentality that you can say no. Like if something is uncomfortable, there are ways to say no, but also agree with the scene. Your character can be grossed out by someone's actions, or your character can be not okay with that. Because I think especially in that improv community is you're like, well, I guess I'm kissing this person now. I've just met them 10 minutes ago backstage.
Wow.
That sort of thing. But what is happening, thank goodness, throughout the country in improv theaters, and big ups to CT who has these policies in place of checking in before a show, finding out the cast of the show, talking to each other. Hey, what are people not cool with today? I was doing a show before pandemic where I'm a smaller person, and on my team there is a big guy. So sometimes I jump on his back, and so he was like, "Hey, no jumping on my back today." And I was like, "Okay, great." And then checking in afterwards. Same thing can happen in theater. Same thing can happen when you're filming a TV show or movies. Just checking in before a scene, checking in after a scene. Hey, what was cool? What was not okay?
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't like it when you. So we have some transgender performers at CT using wrong words or uncomfortable words, using different wrong pronouns or words that might be hurtful to a certain group of people, not even just transgender, different race, whatever it might be. Of sometimes that comes up of, hey, I didn't like you calling me that slang term, or whatever it might be.
That's huge.
I'll shut up now.
No, I think that's so helpful, because I was thinking about that as we started talking. As I asked Courtney the question about like the female population, but also like recognizing the LGBTQ population within theater, and like how, and even obviously you mentioned like race, and just how like identity politics exist in theater and all that. But I would love to shift to, because I know you mentioned a couple of your own productions and things that you were a part of, but would either of you be comfortable sharing any like personal experiences that you either witnessed or saw or had experienced yourself of any type of sexual harassment, and kind of how you handled that situation or how you felt, like if you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, I did the 25th anniversary production, off-Broadway production of Tony and Tina's Wedding. So I played Sister Albert Maria, which is the cute little nun. Not to make myself cute, but I was cute. I was really cute.
Of course you were cute.
And so the basic thing is you have a wedding, Tony and Tina get married, then you go to the reception, and the audience is there participating in a wedding.
That's so fun.
It is pretty fun. It's not my kind of theater, but like I did love being a part of it. And so I feel rude saying it's not my kind of theater, but anyway, it's a fun experience. It's an experience. So Albert Maria is this wonderful nun that like loves her family and starts off at the wedding being very religious, and then over the course of the wedding, at the reception, like the habit comes off, my glasses came off, I put on a ton of makeup, I was dancing Britney Spears in the middle of the dance floor, like it gets fun. And so the director had told me, and the stage manager had said, and they had had this meeting with every cast member, but then pulled a couple of us aside to say, audience members really like this character and feel as though that they can say or do anything. And so just be prepared. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's great. People would never. Oh, people do. I had men put their hand up my skirt. I had people on the dance floor like hold me like a little too close, whisper in my ear, like, and it's the thing of like, I knew that this theater was interactive and that people could get too comfortable or think that, oh, you're like a prop, like even though you're a person and a human being, you're playing a role and I'm going to play this role with you. And so it was definitely something that made me uncomfortable. But at the same time, I was very confident in the part. And I also had this out of, I could easily like grab their collar, whisper in their ear and be like, the Lord is watching, and then like walk away. And like, so the role of Sister Albert Maria was great because I could immediately flip it on them and like turn into like this like ultra Catholic, like in your face, like how dare you like recite prayers to them and make them feel as though they've done something wrong, because what they have done is something wrong. And so I felt like it might have been harder on my other cast members that were the bridesmaids that kind of had the role of like crazy bridesmaid girl. And so if anybody tried anything with them, I felt bad for them because they almost had to give in to that indulgence, which they don't have to. So all of the cast members, we really did look out for each other. And if there was, I know distinctly like going up to a couple of guy cast members and being like, keep him away from me, or just watch him, he's making me uncomfortable. Because people just thought of us as, I paid for this ticket, I can do what I want with it. And but again, I will say those experiences were not outweighed by the amazing experiences of people that I've met doing that show and how much fun we had. There is that interaction that's super uncomfortable, especially, and Matt can attest to that, improv, or anytime you're off the stage or break that fourth wall and you're interacting with people, they feel as though they can do whatever they want to you because you've now included them. And like, it's like, no, that's not true. You can't just put your hands on me because you feel like it.
Right. That's powerful.
Yeah, it was again, a wonderful experience, but it did have those drawbacks where I remember being on the train home, going home to my husband and being like, how do I tell him I got like groped and made super uncomfortable tonight?
Right.
But to the flip side to that, this production was 2014. And so I loved how the stage manager and the director never made it a conversation of, this is how you defend yourself. It was, if this happens, you tell us. Like we had a secret word, code words, and we could tell somebody.
Guy Fieri, right?
Right, yeah.
The show was in the basement of Guy Fieri's restaurant.
The basement of the Guy Fieri's restaurant.
Amazing.
He never came. But to their credit, like they talked about it as, you're not asking for this, but this could happen. And there were interactions where I had to make out with somebody that I didn't know, and we sat down previous to the show starting and said like, okay, like this is what we have to do. How are you comfortable with? Like, what are you comfortable with? And like, we had like full on conversations about it before we had to be intimate, which was great.
Yeah. It sounds like your setup, like whether it was the director or your stage manager, like helped empower you all to set those boundaries or ask for help or feel like it was okay to say, whoa, like here's a boundary.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's that thing of like, even if it's not another actor, it could be an audience member that just invades that space and makes you super uncomfortable and thinks that, oh, you're asking for this. And like, no, I'm not. I'm playing a role in a part. Like I'm having a good time at my job right now, but like that doesn't give you the right. Yeah, I'm still a person.
Right.
Oh,
yeah. That was a powerful statement of saying like treating you like a prop. I think that just says it all, right? Like we know that kind of the root of sexual violence is like treating another human being like an object, right? In some way that they're entitled to that person's body, which is just obviously not true and not right. And that entitlement that those audience members felt, and or maybe fellow, castmates in other productions, like feel this entitlement to, I can just do whatever I want because I'm in this position of power or I've created this position of power. So that's really, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you went through that, but I'm glad you enjoyed the productions, outside of that.
Oh, it was great. And I felt super safe. But it was just this moment, and they always caught you off guard. It was always this, like, I'm having a great show tonight, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then all of a sudden it happened on like a Sunday afternoon. And you're like, what the? I had a great week.
You're like, no. Yeah. Matt, did you want to share? It looked like you were going to add something.
So I have a lot of stories, unfortunately.
I'm sure.
I have a semi-funny story and a not so funny. Which would you like to hear? Both?
Whichever you would like to share. We probably only have time for one, I think.
Okay, so I'll tell you the not so funny one. So, because it is, yeah, it's sort of similar. So it happened to me very recently, not recently, probably a couple of years ago. I was in a show I have done a couple of shows over the years where I have to play more than one person, sometimes up to 25 people.
I've seen them and they're so
You've seen
good.
one
You
of
are
them, yeah.
hilarious. Zach and I still talk about 39 steps with the hello. It was so
So I did another one that wasn't 39 steps, but I will not name names. But I was playing about 20 different people. And one of the main roles I had was I was playing this countess, this woman who like inherited this castle. And the other character, we were both gender flipped. There was a woman playing this like cowboy that was coming in to kind of woo this this countess, and the woman who was playing the countess or playing the cowboy, again just felt that she was playing a man, so she had free reign to touch me and do whatever she wanted to in the rehearsal hall without asking or talking about it beforehand. And I was really thrown off that first rehearsal because the director that I worked with on that show is very much like a lot of directors. I'm like that too as a director, of like, all right, the first rehearsal, do whatever you want, and then we'll see from there. We'll block and we'll figure it out from there. So that's what that was. Luckily, I'm very she is a intimacy coordinator, the one who was the director. So immediately she like shut it down because she could see how uncomfortable I was.
good.
Took me aside, talked, then took her aside, talked, and like then we talked as a group, and everything was kind of okay from there. But it's all about having that conversation. If like legitimately, I'll do anything for a laugh. You've seen my Purple Thursday videos, but I'll do anything for a laugh. And if she legitimately came to me beforehand and was like, all right, I'm going to stick my hand here, I'm going to do this, I'd be like, okay, that's hilarious, do that. But the fact that she did not even check with me, not cool. Wasn't funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it brings it back to what you've been kind of highlighting the whole time, the power and control piece. Like asking for consent beforehand helps you feel in control. And like, I know what's going to happen. And
100%.
I feel like someone is having power over me or something because I'm in the know. And I really like that you said that the intimacy coordinator / director, like noticed it, because I think this whole conversation kind of is brought to a point of like, there are leaders in these spaces who can, you know, be in the know, look out for these things, help notice the person who's kind of looking uncomfortable, who maybe can't find the words. And I'm really glad that we are talking about this all today.
Yeah, and it made me think of too with Matt, like I've co-facilitated a lot of classes with you in like the high schools and things, and I remember you sharing a lot of times with high school students about your experience in high school in theater. And we haven't even, just because we don't have time, unfortunately, but this has been such a good conversation. We can talk about this forever. But I know you used to bring up the fact that like people would make fun of you. And I saw that a lot in high school, of like guys particularly, or anyone, any member of the LGBTQ community being made fun of for being in theater, and using like someone's gender identity or sexual orientation as a target. And we didn't even get into that, but I feel like that's a huge piece of like, we have to take this seriously, right? Like no matter who is being targeted, no matter who is the one being harassed, like we have to acknowledge that sexual harassment is never okay, and that it is serious, you know, and can happen in all different spaces. So
it creates the culture. Like what you were saying is that when those comments are okay, when it's like misogynistic comments or sexual harassment comments that, like Courtney said, we're a family. So it's okay if I make those comments of how good you look tonight or whatever it is.
Right.
It just lays that foundation, and it's not okay.
right.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not. And I appreciate you both for sharing like personal experiences, and also this little bit of hope that like there are options here. There's also the opportunity to really enjoy what you're doing and feel supported when these kinds of things are unfortunately likely to happen. but connecting with people for support, leaning on one another, and also like celebrating your success and your achievement in gaining these roles and like getting to do the things that you love to do. I feel like maybe this is a good point to kind of bring it to an end. I don't know if anybody has any other like burning thoughts or things that they want to share, but
can I just, sorry, I know this episode's like, we're going to be canceled by the network. We're running over. This is like when the Super Bowl ran over and they put on Heidi. So just quickly with resources in theater, for in theater specifically, just know like community theater, stage manager, even in regional, stage manager is your go-to. If you get into professional theater, there are unions that protect you. There are laws that, obviously, sexual harassment against the law, sexual assault against the law. But there are specifically in like when you, even movie and TV in unions, there are rules, there are sexual harassment policies. So just know you are covered, and there's always like a stage manager or someone to go to. All right, I'll shut up.
And us.
And
us. Oh my goodness, us, we're amazing.
And of course, I think like, you know, obviously both Matt and Courtney and myself sort of are more on the education prevention side and not so much the counseling and advocacy, but like there's insight that we can provide, particularly for you two, like of your personal experiences and perspectives that you can provide to assist students who might be dealing with that. So, you know, we can have obviously students contact us. And I know Sydney will go over our contact information, but feel free to contact Matt or Courtney too. So if you have any thoughts or questions, so
yeah,
pass it back off to you. Oh, look at that, your card.
Can't see my card.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say what I normally say, right? If you have any thoughts or questions or reactions to what we discussed today, or would like to connect with any of us for any reason, you can reach us via email or phone. My email is sydney.t@wcogd.org, and my WCSU email is trezas@wcsu.edu. And Cara's is cara.m @wcogd.org or macklerc@wcsu.edu. We can provide connection to Courtney and Matt. We're more than happy to do that if you both are okay with that. And our office phone number is 203-837-3939. Remember, these episodes are all recorded and will be available to view on IGTV, YouTube, and Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at WCOGD_on campus and Facebook at the Women's Center on campus, where the YouTube link will also be available. Please share with your friends. Stay tuned for next week's episode. And we really encourage you to reach out and give us feedback. Let us know your thoughts. Help us help you all if you need it. Thank you so much. Thank you both for being here. We so appreciate you. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, guys.